The fog settled over the small coastal town like a heavy shroud, obscuring everything in its path. I had heard rumors of a hidden lighthouse, perched on a cliff overlooking the turbulent sea. They said it was a place of both beauty and tragedy, where the boundary between the living and the dead was said to be thin. Driven by a mix of fascination and trepidation, I set out one misty morning to find this elusive lighthouse. The path was rugged and overgrown, the air thick with an eerie silence. With each step the fog seemed to swallow me whole, the world around me fading into a ghostly haze. After what felt like hours of wandering, the outline of the lighthouse finally emerged from the mist. It stood tall and weathered, its windows dark and empty. As I approached, I noticed the sound of distant waves crashing against the rocks below, a haunting symphony that seemed to echo the lighthouse's isolation. Inside, the air was damp and cold, and the walls seemed to hold the memories of decades long past. The beam of my flashlight danced across faded photographs and old, dusty furniture. It was as if time had frozen within these walls, preserving the echoes of laughter and footsteps that were no longer there. I climbed the narrow staircase, the wooden steps creaking underfoot. At the top, I found myself in the lantern room, the glass panes coated in a layer of grime. The view outside was obscured by the relentless fog, but I could still hear the crashing waves, a constant reminder of the sea's restless power. It was then that I noticed a journal on a dusty shelf, its pages yellowed with age. As I began to read, the words transported me to a different era, a time when the lighthouse keeper had poured his heart onto the pages. He wrote of his solitude, of the beauty of the sea, and of a love lost to the waves. But as I turned the pages, the tone grew darker. The entries became disjointed, filled with ramblings about voices in the wind and figures standing at the edge of his vision. The lighthouse keeper wrote of sleepless nights haunted by nightmares and a growing sense of unease that consumed him. In the final entries, his handwriting became shaky and frantic. He described strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, and glimpses of a shadowy figure that left him trembling with fear. The last page bore only a few words. "They're here. I can't escape." A shiver ran down my spine, and I turned to the window, suddenly aware of a presence in the room with me. The fog outside had grown thicker, and in its midst I saw a figure, a silhouette that seemed both ethereal and solid. It stood at the edge of the cliff, its gaze fixed on the churning sea below. Fear clenched at my chest as I realized that the figure matched the descriptions in the journal, the shadowy apparition that had tormented the lighthouse keeper in his final days. I stumbled back, my heart racing, and the figure turned its gaze toward me. In that instant, a mournful wail echoed through the room, a sound that seemed to reverberate not just in my ears, but deep within my soul. I fled the lighthouse, the fog seeming to press against me as if trying to keep me within its grasp. As I stumbled down the rocky path, the wail followed me, growing fainter but never truly fading. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of the town, my breath ragged and my mind haunted by the events of that day. The story of the lighthouse and its tormented keeper stayed with me, a chilling reminder that some places are steeped in history and darkness that can never truly be escaped. And even now, when I hear the distant sound of crashing waves and the mournful cry of the wind, I can't help but wonder if the spirits of the past still linger, trapped in the fog that shrouds the secrets of the sea.